So, Consciousness Explorer, how is that vision going for you? It appears that you are intentionally remembering more and more of your innate gifts, your innate sensitivity, your innate consciousness. I imagine that part of the reason we're connecting today in this video is because you're providing yourself some anchoring. And so, to that end, my friend, I say, greetings. I'm Danielle Lynn, herder of cats, creator of at least this painting right here. The more that you embark on the expansion of consciousness, on the deepening of pleasure, on the increased awareness of self, everything that you expand on some level has a counterbalance. As an example, the more you increase your capacity, your sensitivity to pleasure, the further you also increase your capacity and sensitivity to perceived pain. So sometimes when you are going through a process of deepening your understanding, your knowing, your consciousness, and what you can perceive, it has this interesting paradoxical effect that you simultaneously appear to know more, and at the same time, there is a knowing less, an unknowing that happens. I would describe this similar to you're in a room, you've known everything there is to know about the room, you discover a door, you open the door, suddenly you know more because you're moving beyond that room. But then as you know more and you realize there's more, you look around to this vast new place and realize there's a lot here that is unknown. So you went from, let's say, knowing 100% of the container you were within, maybe 99% because you didn't know what was beyond the door. So you open the door, suddenly you have more knowing that there's something beyond the door, and yet there is a greater field of unknowing. What sometimes happens as people just seek the mental or energetic pursuit of this kind of experience is they can become very immersed in the inner world, sometimes to the exclusion of this experience of reality. The thing is, whether or not this reality is illusory, whether it's a dream, whether it's a simulation, there is an aspect of your consciousness that has chosen to be embodied in the experience. So it would be similar to being within a game, but you spend all of your time reading the instruction manuals or the settings or the controls, and so your character is idling in the middle of the game. And perhaps the justification one gives is, well, I really want to make sure I know the controls. I want to see everything about how it's programmed. I want to know all the things because that's what will assist me in effectively playing the game and living in the world. But imagine there's a certain point where you've read and you've read and you've read and you've dove into all the configurations and you've looked at all this stuff, and there's eventually a point where the invitation is to either begin playing the game or to just stop playing the game altogether. There is this place where, as you expand in conscious awareness, you might be tempted to take the game less seriously. And some people are tempted to take the game less seriously to the point where they say, well, what's even the point of playing at all? And this is where you sometimes get people that go into a spiritual depression or an ennui, and they see there's no point, like there's the pointlessness in life. I have shared my story before, but I'll share again. I had a moment in my life where I was in such despair that I had that exact thought, well, nothing matters in life. And then I immediately had the flip of that thought, which is nothing matters. So then if nothing matters, everything I do is just for funsies. Everything that I do is just an experience that I get to have. And I get to play with and enjoy the variety here. Am I suddenly someone who collects all the different flowers of the world and presses them in a page? Am I someone who decides to become the leading expert on vacuum cleaners? The funny thing we often do is we either take life too seriously or not seriously at all. And somewhere in between is simply giving yourself the permission to experience, the permission to simultaneously go all in with this experience while not being overly attached to what the results say about who you are or what you're supposed to be doing. I have found that there is not per se a key of what one is meant to be doing other than to live your life to the fullest expression of your true innate joy from the frequency of source love as it best inspires you moment to moment, while considering that you are you and you are all things, so act accordingly. Yeah, it was just a microcosm nugget of how you might consider and contemplate this. This is one of my working reflections so far, so take of that what you like or don't. There's an interesting point that we arrive at where the pursuit of knowledge and understanding becomes this almost secret way that fear of actually living our life manifests. When someone thinks they need to think or they need to plan further, and they're saying, I really want to do this, but I need more blank. I need more time. I need more money. I need more this. I will tell you that in my experience, that is a story. That is a delay tactic that one gives when they do not feel ready to say yes to the embodiment of life in the moment. Once again, I say that from personal experience. There are many delay tactics that I utilized throughout my life to try and paint this image in my mind of, well, before I'm allowed to do this, first I must do this. From another perspective, you could say what they were called as permission slips, consent slips that I gave myself in order to believe if I took these steps, then I was allowed to be this or feel that way. If I was able to build a successful business, then I was allowed to feel confident or capable. If I had this kind of relationship, then I was allowed to reflect to myself, oh, I'm lovable. But once again, all of these things I've experienced are stories as well. Because there's been times when I didn't have, let's say, a certain kind of business, and yet I was still able to tap into the confidence of myself. There were times that I didn't have the relationship, and yet I experienced the deep inherent love that I have for myself within. And in these ways, there are so many portals and pathways for us to simply give ourselves consent now to live our lives now, that it really just involves a willingness to be curious, to be so present with everything you're feeling right now that you're also present with whatever you may have been running from, you may have been avoiding. Whatever you have been doing that may have been serving as a way to address a conscious or unconscious fear, the invitation you have is to be present in this moment. Take a breath in and simply observe the current sensation you have around any perceived fear, challenge, story. And if you're able to sit with it long enough past anything it might be saying towards you, because sometimes when we pause and we listen to that fear, what will happen is you'll suddenly receive the litany. The litany is what I would describe as the stories that the fear uses to inspire people to keep moving. If the fear was the embodiment of a being, of a person, and the moment you stopped and looked at it, it was starting to yell or panic or scream or cry or say things, you were just present with it, neither judging it, neither dismissing or acknowledging the claims, simply observing it. You might notice something very interesting. You might notice that the story, the expression begins to transform. It's almost like a time lapse. I relate it to when you suddenly see a seed grow and it does this and the plant moves around and it opens and closes and dies and this. When you actually pause and are present with something that has the vibration of fear or of urgency inner created based on stories, fear and urgency, you may notice, in a way, it's almost as though this inner energy is attempting to get you to move by pressing buttons and triggers. And when you are not responding immediately to familiar buttons and triggers, it's almost like it adapts and attempts to find the new buttons, the new expression. And if it's unsuccessful with that, then you see what happens. In a way, you could say it's almost like oxygen depriving a flame. When you don't keep feeding it, you see what happens to it. Your ability to simply be present with your thoughts and your feelings, your ability to give pause to the experiences you're having without needing to immediately fix them or adjust them, is one of the most empowering practices you can incorporate in your life, because it allows you to approach any situation in life with that much more clarity and mastery. It's not about never feeling fear. It's that you are completely transmuting your relationship to how you respond. Because I would look at the experience of fear as simply a ever-present vibration in the field of existence. And it's not so much that we must avoid it or that we must create so many things outside of us that we can quiet it down. I have found that one of the most loving relationships you can have with that is the counterbalance to anchor so fully and completely into self-trust that fear simply becomes yet another vibrational condition upon which you surf and fly and glide within this reality. It's no longer something, fear is not something to fear itself anymore. It is simply yet another harmonic or disharmonic note, however you'd like to see it, in this experience of reality. And so then less energy is spent attempting to control or tame fear, which is where a lot of energy is spent in this world. And instead, there is more energy placed in embodying the state of, let's just say, enjoyable experience, this permission to be fully present with life. Because most of the time, it's the fear of the unknown or the perceived pain of the past that often splits people's focus from the present moment into imagining that if they resolve the thing in the past, they can feel better now, or if they can anticipate and plan and create for the future, they'll be able to feel better now. But both of those things are illusions. Both of them take you out of the present moment. And what ends up happening for many is that it becomes a habitual moving out of the present moment, which is why many people who build businesses or work very hard to have a certain amount of money, to have a certain amount of security, may find it very challenging to actually rest when there's times of pause, because they may still feel driven to do something, because that feeling of insecurity doesn't go away from having money. If the inner root isn't transmuted, the having of things may appear to dull certain experiences of pain, fear, or worry. But what I often find is then the experience shifts to something else. Maybe the new fear is a person's health, so they invest a lot of their money that they got into their health or their well-being. Maybe it's around spirituality, so they do all these things to attempt to meet their spirituality. But then what we're witnessing is an experience of life that is constantly being jerked this way or that way. This is a fishing pole. Jerked this way, jerked that way, based purely on a sense of attempting to escape or address an inner state. And I don't share this from a place of judgment for anybody who may go through that kind of experience, but rather as a reflection opportunity for you, wherever this message finds you, to say, if at this moment you so choose to so clearly see what has been inspiring your movement and choices until right now, then you have an opportunity to tap into a new now moment right now. One that is more based and rooted in self-trust than it is based and rooted in attempting to avoid something negative. And I imagine that if you've co-created this video with me, with you, with all of us right now, that you have everything you need and everything it takes to embody this shift in your life right now. And so I thank you, my friend, for this conversation, because it offered wisdom to me as well. And this is part of the fun of co-creating in these ways, because we all receive expanded wisdom, expanded embodiment through experiences like this, which is one of the reasons I enjoy doing it. And if you feel inspired to step further into that kind of anchoring shift, I'm going to invite you to check out at this time the Self Alchemy Lab, link in my description, because I'm envisioning that we're about to step into more and more grounding into deliberate reality creation, deliberate reality surfing, being able to meet reality from an inner to outer creator perspective. I also have other links in my description, tools and resources that you can check out if you like, ways to stay connected. And in all cases, my friend, I deeply appreciate you, and I look forward to our next conversation.